welcome to the Wild Rose podcast. I'm Whitney Rose.
And I'm Connie Daniels.
And today we have a very special guest, someone who's near and dear to our heart, Jerwin Monje.
Hello.
You're looking fabulous in pink today.
Thank you. The sun's finally out. It's springtime. I love it.
So just to give you a
You're
little...
radiating.
Yeah, you are.
All the
and
spring
you have your
vibes.
5D necklace on.
Yes.
Always representing. So, Jerwin, funny story. Well, you know those like moments where you just never know how one moment can impact the rest of your life, and how someone can come into your life. I was on Instagram just scrolling through one night. This is like before season 1 aired of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. I think it had been announced, cast had been announced, and we were getting ready for the premiere of season 1. And I was on Instagram and I saw that Heather Gay was doing a live with someone named Jerwin. So I just joined the live and started listening, and Jerwin was sharing their story. I just remember you were talking about inclusivity, what it's like to be gay. I can't remember. I was just like, wow, this person is really really strong and really insightful, and I loved everything that you were sharing and what you stood for. So somehow Jerwin and I connected through Wild Rose Beauty, I think.
Yeah, I think I DM'd you because I saw you had a skincare line, and I was like, I want to start trying these products. So then I started like buying some of the products, and I fell in love with Wild Rose Beauty, and like that's all I've been using now for the last like 2.5 years.
So we can thank Heather Gay
for
doing the live with you, because that's how I met you. And Jerwin has become a fast friend, is always there for me, and has actually helped me build Wild Rose Beauty. So, and Jerwin got to come to BravoCon and represent Wild Rose Beauty, and
that was so fun. BravoCon was such an amazing experience.
Yeah, Jerwin and Justin helped me with the booth selling products and was my personal handler.
Yeah.
When I saw Jerwin at BravoCon, you were just in charge. You knew what was going on, where to go, and I thought you'd been doing this for years or something. I'm like, does Jerwin do this every year?
No, but Jerwin is a professional Whitney Wrangler.
Yeah, Whitney Wrangler.
Yes.
New one.
Like whenever we do stuff for Pride or drag shows, Jerwin keeps me on where I need to be.
Game.
Yeah.
I love it.
So we're so excited to have Jerwin on the podcast today. I think that their story is going to touch a lot of people and inspire a lot of people, and hopefully just spread some love and hope around the world, especially right now. So let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we will dive right into all things Jerwin Monje.
If you're like me and pretty much everyone else I know in my life, your time is very limited, especially when it comes to cooking and meal planning. One of the things that drives me so crazy is when I go to the store, I'm walking down all the aisles and I'm throwing in a million ingredients because I'm not even sure what I'm going to be using to make my meals this week. Well, there's no more screwing the grocery store for that one ingredient to complete your recipe. HelloFresh takes away all that hassle by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients so you have exactly what you need, and helps you cut down on food waste. HelloFresh is cheaper than grocery shopping and 25% cheaper than takeout. No worries if you're not a pro in the kitchen. HelloFresh's foolproof recipes arrive pre-portioned and easy to prepare in just a few steps. I love HelloFresh because it's yummy, it's healthy, it's easy to make, and I don't have to put a ton of time and energy into it. Go to HelloFresh.com/WildRose16 and use code WildRose16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/WildRose16 and use code WildRose16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm so excited that we have Jerwin here with us on our podcast today. I just wanted to share how we met. Jerwin, do you remember that day?
We went to Whitehorse, didn't we?
Yes.
For dinner.
Yeah, so Whitehorse is a restaurant, really fun restaurant downtown. And we met, of course, through Whitney. And it was just kind of like a random, hey, let's all go to grab dinner, right?
Yeah, we're our mutual friends, Alex and Parker.
Yes.
We try to go to dinner at least once a quarter.
Yeah. Once every 4 months.
Whenever schedules align, everyone's busy. But we were just going out to dinner with Alex, Parker, and Jerwin. Jerwin had moved, or you're thinking visiting?
No, I wasn't. Moving to Salt Lake City wasn't even on my mind. I
So
was
you were
just
just
visiting for the launch party for Wild Rose Beauty during season 2 of filming.
Okay.
That's right. Gosh, that was it
I
was
can't keep
a
it
while
straight.
ago.
It was 2 years ago.
Yeah. How's that time gone so fast?
I don't know.
It's
It's crazy to think that I've lived here for 2 years.
It is crazy. It just flies by.
Yeah.
So when we met, I think that I have to say you are the first non-binary person that I've met in person. And so when we talked about that, just learning like the pronouns and all of this was so new to me. Because everybody can be called whatever they want, and I respect that. And I just have to say the only hard thing in my brain to like get this straight was they, them is plural, right? And so in my head, I'm like, but you're one, but you're singular, but this is plural. And how do I get that right? Because I mess it up all the time. I do try. So, but anyway, I just remember thinking like, gosh, this is like so different in my mind. I've never met anybody that's non-binary. And you're just the sweetest, kindest, talented, your most talented person that I met. So
Well, thank you.
yeah. And just like so interesting. So I want you to share kind of like your story of like where you grew up and how you got to Utah.
Yeah, so I grew up in San Jose, California. I knew I was gay from like as soon as I can remember. Like there are photos of me when I was like 3 years old, like walking around with like my mom's like lipstick in like my hand and just like going around, and just the pictures like exude this flamboyancy. And I was like, I knew from the moment that like I started talking, I was like, oh, I know, like I'm different. Like whenever I'd watch movies with my cousins, I remember specifically we were watching a Cinderella Story with Chad Michael Murray and Hilary Duff. And like all my cousins were like, oh my God, Hilary Duff is like so hot. And I was like, she's cute, but like Chad Michael Murray, I was like attracted to him. And I was like, what is this feeling?
What is this feeling in my bosom?
I know. So I always knew like I was different. And then when I was in high school, I was like, oh, it's called being gay. Like I like other dudes. Mm-hmm. And I eventually, like, I came out first. Like the very typical gay coming out was like, oh no, I think I'm just bisexual. Like I like both guys and girls. And then I was like, no, I don't think I like girls. Like, and all my friends were like, yeah, we know. Like we all knew. Like even my mom was like, I was kind of just like waiting. I was like wondering why you waited so long to tell me. And I was like, I just wasn't ready.
So you waited until high school.
Yeah, I came out my senior year of high school when I got my first boyfriend. So.
How did your friends take that? It sounds like your family accepted that and was like, oh, we already knew.
Yeah, I thought I had a harder time coming out to my family just because, you know, you hear all these horror stories of families not being accepting. And even though I knew deep down my family would be fine with it, there was just that, you know, that fear that you have that what if they don't? But both my mom and my dad told me, like, you know, we love you no matter what. Oh. So you can do whatever, be whatever, but you will always be our child.
Oh, I love that because I know a lot of these coming out stories don't turn out that way
Yeah.
at all. Very much the opposite. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
Your family could be so loving and supporting.
But all my friends were like, yeah, we know.
Mm-hmm.
We were just waiting for you to tell
Really?
us.
Yeah.
And even when I didn't like, I was just such a like flamboyant child in everything that I did. My mannerisms, like the way that I talk and everything. So it was no surprise to anybody when I was like, I'm gay.
Just how you said that.
Exactly. And that's one thing I love so much about Jerwin is the happiness, and I'm going to use the word flamboyancy in everything. Like when Jerwin commits to something, it's like, okay, we're going to go all the way. And I love that about you.
Yeah, it's always 1,000. Like it has to be next level.
It's like if we're going to wear heels, we're going to wear the 6-inch ones.
Yes. Even though they will hurt my feet.
Beauty is pain, right?
So you graduate from high school. Well, before, this is probably going to be all over the place, but I want to tell one of my favorite stories about Jerwin is we were doing season 3 of Wild Rose Beauty Party that didn't make it to air. And production was here, setting up. We had RuPaul drag queens coming and guests from all over the United States, all of our friends and family, Wild Rose Beauty ambassadors. And there was a lot that needed to be done. And I look around and I'm like, why isn't anything getting done? And I look over, I'm like, that's because my entire team is in glam.
We were all in your room. I knew that things had to be done, so I like did half my makeup at home, and I was like, "Oh, we'll like do the other half in Whitney's room, like we did last year, like filming, just having fun."
I was up in that room with you, and I remember being fascinated by how you were doing your makeup. I'm like, wow, I learned all new techniques and everything by watching it.
Well, yeah,
it's amazing.
Because I look around like Justin and Jerwin, Justin Durkee, not Justin Rose, although I would love to see Justin Rose bake his makeup. But I was just like, we might need to hire an events team next time. Because my team, everyone is really concerned about their lashes and their lipstick. I love it though. So backtrack. You graduate from high school, and you've always been in the into music, right?
Yes, like growing up, I was the perfect Catholic child. Like first communion, like I was on the bishop's youth council. I did confirmation. I was in the choir. I taught Sunday school. I was literally for like kids. I was the perfect like prime example of what a good Catholic Filipino should be. But music had always been a passion of mine. And when I was in high school, I took a psychology course, and I was like, this is also like really fascinating. So when it was time to figure out like what I wanted to go to college for, I was like, well, is there anything that combines music and like psychology? And I literally just like went on the computer and I Google searched like music and psychology, and I found this thing called music therapy. And I was like, what's music therapy? And I ended up going to college and got my degree in music therapy and a minor in psychology, and became a music therapist. Oh my gosh. And that's what I do.
I didn't even realize there was a music therapy degree.
Yeah.
There was a specific degree for this.
Yeah, there are about 80, 85 colleges around the country that offer music therapy as an actual like 4-year course. And there were 2 in California, and I knew I didn't want to leave California yet. I was still like, I want to be like close to home. So I was only a couple hours away, and I've been a music therapist now since 2015. So that's like 8 years.
Wow.
So what does that entail as far as like a career in music therapy?
So I love music therapy because there are so many different avenues you can go about. You can have your own private practice. You can work in hospitals. You can work with special education. I worked briefly in geriatric, so geriatric psychiatric inpatient hospital care. But the majority of my time as a music therapist, I worked in hospice care. I still work in hospice care, so I use music to help folks who are on hospice care in their last few months or a couple of years, just using music as a form of relaxation, emotional support, social support through songwriting, talking about their lives, doing life review and things like that. So it's a very special special career that a lot of people like. It takes a special kind of person to work in hospice, and that never really processes with me because it's like it's just human interaction.
I know, but it is true. I always say that about you. I'm like, it does take a special kind of person to care for someone. Probably like it's not the easiest job, right? It can be pretty taxing or like emotional, but like you're helping someone on the last days of their life.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time people on hospice have lost the ability to take care of themselves, right? So it does take a special kind of person. And to be able to sit with them and reminisce about their life or help calm them down, it does take a special kind of person. And I've only seen 2 hospice. Well, I was young when my last grandparents died, but most recently my father-in-law and then my grandma. And just watching what the nurses and the therapists do, it's like, I don't know if I could really ever do that.
It can be very emotionally taxing. Like my first year working in hospice, I had to find ways to learn how to be present with my patients and their families and be there for them like 100%. But then once I stepped foot out of their home, like that was it. Like I couldn't think about it. I couldn't bring that emotional trauma and emotional baggage with me to other cases or even like home with me, because that would just implode my life thinking about all that stuff.
How do you do that? How do you compartmentalize that?
I just know that once I leave, I have to just focus on myself and move from one case to the next and know that I can be there for them in my 45 minutes, hour with them, and I can be there to support them in that time. But once I leave, I have to there's something in my brain that I've kind of like taught myself how to do to just like cut it off.
I imagine that people that work in any kind of healthcare, like emergency room or whatever, they have to kind of do that similar thing or try their best to, so that when they go home, they're like, they can be present with their family, with their friends, and not let it take a huge toll on you every day.
Well, I'm asking for myself.
Yeah.
How do I leave Housewives? Housewives. I'm
How do you
being
leave
dead
that
serious.
there? And then step into your...
Yeah, it's really hard. That's like,
Yeah.
I would love to know more about skills around compartmentalizing because it's really hard to not bring baggage home from work.
Yeah. And I think it's just knowing how to be present in the moment. So when you're filming Housewives, you're doing your thing, whatever happens, you know that that's happening in that space and that time. But when you leave that space and you enter like your home or you're with your friends, just learning how to be fully present with them and not thinking about what's going on over there.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult work. Like I'm not perfect at it. Like there are still some cases that like really travel with me and I have to remind myself like, okay, what can we do to recenter ourselves?
Yeah, I think the hard thing is I'm getting better at it, especially after last season I learned how. But it's hard when you get home and then you have producers calling, castmates calling, friends calling.
Yeah. They won't let you.
They won't let. It's like reality TV is just one big octopus.
Well, yeah, because it is your real life.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah.
Well, I would love to kind of, we're going to jump all over the place, but circle back to like your journey as a gay person, and like going back to Connie's point, like you've actually, we were both born and raised in Utah, so it hasn't been very diverse until the last decade, to be honest. But yeah, I think this, especially with everything happening right now in the community, I think it's important to really dive into stories at a personal level so that people can start connecting and raise each other up. So I want to go back to like more of your journey from college as a gay person. When did you, how do you discover like you don't want to be called the pronoun that you've been called your entire life? That kind of a...
Yeah.
I think that would be cool for people to hear from your perspective.
So after college, I moved to LA And I always knew, like, whenever people would call me he, like, it just never sat right with me. And I didn't know, like, I didn't know why. I was just like, that just doesn't seem right, because I'm so fluid in everything that I do. And once I started, like, the first time I got into drag, I was like, wow, like, this is such like a freeing like feeling. I just feel like so me, like this extension of myself. And when I found out, like, that there were people who identified as non-binary, I was like, what is that? Like, I didn't know, like, as a new, like, young gay person in
So
LA.
when was this?
This was like 2018, I
Okay.
want to say. So about 5 years ago. I was like, people go by like they, them. Like, you don't have to go by he, or someone doesn't have to go by she. And I was like, I think that's what I'm feeling like. I don't want to be called he. I don't, necessarily. I know, like, gay people love calling each other she, and like that's fine. But like deep down, like, I know that none of those I don't really identify with. So being, identifying as non-binary, going with the pronouns they, them, that has just always felt so right, like, with who I am. And I'll say that coming out as non-binary was almost more, not difficult, but more of a process than coming out as gay. Because a lot of people, like, know a lot of gay or queer people in their lives, but like a lot of people are like, oh, well, like, what is non-binary? Like, how did you come about that? And it's just this expression of being able to be yourself without having to conform to like the boxes that like society has placed upon us, being like, boys should be boys and girls should be girls type of thing.
I think you explained that beautifully. And when you say that you're so fluid in all things, I see that about you. And so it makes a lot of sense. Like, you can have a full makeup on, 6-inch heels, but you're like, but I'm not a she,
Yeah.
but then also feeling like in your own body, you're like, well, I'm not like all these things that are like male either. So you are very, I can see that in you.
I
And
know. I
makes
always say,
sense.
like, I'm either like done up and glammed up, or like in sweats and a hoodie, like no makeup on.
Yeah, but that's how she is.
Yeah.
you're pointing to yourself.
Yes. It's either like we're all in or we're all out.
Yeah.
But I think too, like when I think of Jerwin and they, them, theirs, like it's also like a very inclusive way to look at the world, because very much like everywhere I go with Jerwin, we've traveled to different places with Waldrose Beauty and just doing different things for Pride. Like Jerwin's always aware of everyone. Like I can't tell you how many times there's been someone on the outskirt or something, and Jerwin grabs them and pulls them in. And just very like, I think your heart and soul, you're they because you're everyone and you care so much about the world and people. And I don't know, I think that it has to have something to do with it, like the way that you are, like so fluid.
Oh, thank you.
Because it's not just fluid in expression, it's fluid in acceptance.
And non-binary people have existed like forever. It's not like
Really?
a lot of people think it's like this new thing, but it's just evolved over time. Like before, like the culturally like norm of being a they, them, like there were other pronouns like z, zir, and other things like that people have gone by like for decades.
You just didn't hear much about it.
Exactly.
I mean, we're just hearing more and more about it now, right?
Because more and more people, I feel like, are becoming comfortable with themselves, of exploring different facets of their own life and how they want to express themselves.
Well, when I was at St. Mary's College, which is a Catholic school, I took a course called, oh my gosh, it was an inclusivity course. I can't remember the name of the course right now, social justice class, thing like that. And I remember there was these rules, and if we broke the rules in class, like we'd have to put a penny in a jar. And we, at the beginning of the semester, got so many pennies. And these were rules of inclusivity. So is one. When you speak, you can't use like you have to present yourself and be like, that was another one. Like these filler words, no filler words. I do it again. I need to go back to this course. Now I'm going to notice it. Well, it's a real thing, and it's part. It's a social justice thing, and I remember the teachers the first time. So Brooks was probably 9 months old. Bobby was 3, 2-ish, 3, and I remember the first time the teacher said, "Anyone who calls a female, you guys." So you can't address the group as you guys. It was y'all, everyone, everybody. And I remember the first time thinking, okay, that's like, I'm gonna have to get used to that. But then it like made so much sense to me, and I started being hyper aware, especially when men called me you guys, like, hey, you guys, or hey. I'm like, I'm not a guy. I'm a female. Like, and so that was my first experience of using language around inclusivity.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I'm like, hey, women, let's not call each other guys. And it's like weird how it bugs me now. And it's not because of how I identify. I think it's just a respect for like how people want to be called. And so I've learned on all sides of it, using inclusive words is safer. Like it's safer for everyone because you never know how someone's approaching the situation or where they're coming from, what they want to be called, what they don't want to be called. So I still mess up, and I always apologize to Jerwin. I'm like, oh, sorry. But I think it's just practicing using this language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like,
does that make sense?
No, that makes total sense. And I always try to, I mean, using inclusive language, or whenever I'm meeting someone for the first time, like, I don't know how they identify. So I always, like, if I'm meeting someone for the first time, I always just call them, like, oh, they, or, you know, because I don't know what they want to use as their pronouns. And just using inclusive language, like, makes everybody, you know, feel welcome and safe.
Yeah.
So how do you handle people that are kind of, I don't know, I guess people are just either like, they don't understand, they're uneducated, they maybe don't want to, I don't know, like shift and change and see things as they're evolving, and they don't want to call you anything else but like him. Do you have people like that? Do you come across people like that are just like, oh, I'm not going to do
like
that?
Like non-accepting people?
Yeah.
Every so often. And when that does happen, I try and educate them. Like, hey, you know, let's, for example, if someone who was doing that to me, like, didn't care, and they go by like he, him. And what I'd say, well, how would you feel if I just called you like she, her? Like if I referred to you as a she. And you were like, well, I don't identify as a she. I was like, that's the same way I feel. I don't identify as a he, you know?
Yeah.
So just trying to use an example to show them like how I feel. And if they still don't understand it, then that's their loss. And they have to go through their own journey to rework that in their own mind. Because you can't win every battle.
Yeah. No,
you know?
No, you can't.
You have to pick and choose.
Well, I know a big part of your journey as of the last, how many days? Almost 2 years, right?
Today is 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days.
Yes. Oh, actually. Wow. You're over the 2 year.
Yeah.
I saw that post I liked it and commented. But yeah.
Of your sobriety.
Yeah. A big part of your journey has been your sobriety. And are you comfortable sharing a little bit about that? Because that is super powerful.
Yeah. So I've been sober now for just a little over 2 years. And, you know, I always say these last 2 years have been the clearest, most grounding and present I've ever lived my life. And it's all because of my sobriety. Like every successful thing that I've managed to do in the last 2 years is because I'm not under the influence of alcohol and substances. You know, being a gay in LA, I used alcohol to celebrate all the fun times and like, oh my gosh, like let's go out and have fun. But I also used alcohol to cope with, so many negative things that would happen in my life. And there was just no balance. And it was getting to the point where if I didn't stop when I did, like I was just getting so many free passes because I would go out to like bottomless mimosa drunk or bottomless mimosa like brunch, and I would like drive there knowing that I drove there, I would still down like 11 mimosas and I'd still have to drive home afterwards. And my friends were like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I'm fine. And luckily nothing ever happened, but it was like, what am I going to do to push my limit? There was one night I remember we went out and to the bars and it was like 2 a.m. I was like, okay, I'm going to go home. And I really shouldn't have been driving. And I was driving down Hollywood Boulevard and I was at a red light and I stopped and I completely fell asleep for like 5 minutes. I like came to, and luckily like my foot like stayed on the brake, but there were like cars honking at me like, hello, like, are you okay? And then I like came to and I was like, oh, I have to like get home.
Wow.
Wow.
So it was like things like that would happen, or I'd, go.
And not everyone gets that many graces.
Exactly.
It would have caught up to you eventually.
Exactly. Like, and I'd go out to brunch and I'd like drive home, and I had the horrible tendency when I was drunk, I would drunk call people.
None of us have experienced that, right?
No.
But it wasn't like a fun, like, oh, hey, it was like I would call people that I knew that I could elicit a response from, like people who I may have like had history with, like, like people like romantically or things like that, to call them and see like what they would say, because I wanted their attention. I do things like that and they would call me out for it. And then when I was like came to like not drunk the next day, I'd be like, why are you so mad? Like, it was no big deal. I got home, and it was a very tumultuous time. And I just woke up. The thing that got me to like realize that my friends and I were out like all day one day, and we started drinking at like 11 a.m. at brunch, and like we went to like my friend's apartment. It was like 2 a.m. and there were other things aside from alcohol there, and I had a photo shoot the next day. I had to be up at like 8 a.m. And like I somehow like woke up, but I see pictures from like that photo shoot and I was like, what? Like I could just like see the emptiness and like the glaze in my eyes, where I was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you using alcohol to just like numb? Like I had to find out what I was using that to numb, because at that point it wasn't just like celebrating and having fun. It became like a serious issue. So when I saw those photos, I was like, what are you hiding? Like, what are you running from? Because I had struggled with my own mental health at the time as well. And in 2019, I attempted suicide. And that came to a shock to so many people, because they were like, you were just living your life. You were having fun. Like, what was going on in your life? And I had gotten so good at creating this facade for people that they had no idea. And a lot of times when people attempt or do commit suicide, they know people are shocked because they had no idea what was going on. And I created this persona that like, oh, that's just Jerwin, like they're going out and doing their own thing. But in 2019, I was 25 years old, and looking back at it now, like I know that I thought at the time that we were allotted like so much happiness. And at 25 years old, I thought that, okay, well, I've used all my happiness points. Like, there's nothing else like for me here. Like, I guess I can go now.
Wow.
Um, and it was really difficult because I knew that logically, you know, I had great friends, great family, great support system, but there was just in my own mentality, I was at this place where I dug myself deep enough to think that ending it all would be better than having to try and deal with any issues that I had with friends, with family, with myself. Um, so I was like, okay, well, goodbye, everybody. You know, the whole week before I had all these events like with friends and everything, and in my mind, I knew like I had known that that week I was going to try and end my life. So let's just have fun this week before. Like there were parties, there were brunches and everything like that because I thought that I was like, okay, like this is my last hurrah. And luckily, when I tried ending it all, it was just a mixture of alcohol and different substances and things like that. And that I guess subconsciously there was still something inside of me that knew that maybe this isn't the end because from what my friends tell me, so everything I'm saying from this point is what I've been told because I have no recollection of it. I had called one of my best friends and I said, I've just taken all this. Like, I'm calling you to say goodbye. They're like, what? So they rushed to my apartment and they had found me on the floor unconscious and they called 911 and the ambulance came and everything. And they brought me to the hospital. They had to pump my stomach. And even when that happened, they were like, we don't know if they're going to make it. Like, these next few hours are going to be really crucial. My best friend told me that they stayed with me in the emergency room that night and I would convulse and have these seizures. And they weren't sure what was going to happen. So after that, after a certain amount of time, they were like, okay, like they're in the clear. Like they will wake up at some point. And I woke up the next morning and my first thought was, am I dead? My brain was so foggy and it took me a while, like probably a good like 15, 30 minutes to like really come to and like realize where I was. Like I was like in a hospital bed and I had nurses coming to talk to me, like ask me questions. Do you know like who you are? Do you know like what you did? And I just couldn't talk. I didn't know what was going on. And the next thing I know, like my mom like walks into the room and she doesn't say anything. She just goes up and she just hugs me. And she says, we don't have to talk about this right now. She's like, I'm just here for you. Like, you don't have to say anything until you're ready. And then I had more friends coming, like my 3 best friends, like come and visit me. And that morning it was just like, I was like, what have I done? Like, what did I do to get to this state? Like, I didn't realize how bad it was. And I was admitted into a psychiatric hospital for 5 days. And I stayed there for 5 days. And throughout that time, like, I started, like, my brain was just still so foggy from everything. And slowly I had, like, come to, and, like, my friends visited me every day. Like, my parents visited me every day. And I was like, I need to do better. Not only, like, for them, like, obviously there are still so many people out there that care about me. I knew that, but I needed to find a way to care about myself again. And ever since then, I've been in therapy, just doing the work to learn how to love myself and to know that I'm worth loving. I'm worth of like having life, and I'm worth just being alive and being here, being present. And that took so much work. Like the first year after my attempt, I was in therapy every single week, sometimes twice a week. And it's taken a lot of work to get to where I am today, to be able to openly talk about this, because I know that there are a lot of people out there, queer, not queer, however they identify, that go through it, that have mental health struggles. And, you know, growing up, we weren't really allotted the space to really express how we feel. You know, something that I've come to realize in therapy and is that the space that we grew up, we just hid our emotions. We didn't talk about how we felt. So that was a big part of it, is I was just burying everything deep down. And now I'm like, no, we're going to talk about it. Like, I don't care like how uncomfortable you are. Like, I need to tell you how I feel, because I'm not going to allow myself to get back to that place again. And it's been 4 years this year that I, you know, I'm still here, I'm still alive. And it's been a great 4 years. But, you know, that sobriety didn't come right after that.
Right.
You know, my suicide attempt, there was still that part of me that was like, no, I can still use alcohol and like have fun and do all these things. But that didn't come until 2 years after my attempt, where I realized that I was like, no, like this plays a big part in your like own mental health and your struggles as well. Like you need to take a step back and reevaluate it. And I'm glad I did.
We're glad you did.
Yeah.
We're so grateful you are here with us. Wow. I think a lot of people, unfortunately, can relate to a lot of those feelings. And so it's important to share your story and empower others that like, hey, I know what it's like. And on the other side of that is something so much more beautiful. I just have to be here long enough to see it, you know?
Yeah. And it's just a day by day process. You know, we all have really good days. We all feel amazing, but then there are days where we don't feel amazing. We have those really bad mental health days. And I still have those days, but now like through therapy and through this time, I found ways to be able to like identify how I'm feeling, what caused that feeling, and what can I do to change that feeling? What can I do to bring myself back to a happy place?
The cool thing about friendships and about life is we all go through our hard stuff at different times, probably for a reason, so that we can help support each other and rely on each other at different times, right?
For sure.
Because you can't both be bad at the same time.
Right.
That's the key.
And if you are, you need a third friend.
Yeah.
And you know, the thing I've learned, you know, to do is just to always just reach out to people, you know, reach out to your friends and just say like, hey, what's up? You're just like, ask how they're doing, and just learning how to be open with the people closest to you. That's probably the hardest thing, honestly, is, you know, I've learned that I can text my friends, that I don't just have to text them when I'm like, something great is happening. I can text them and be like, hey, like, this is how I'm feeling today. Like, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted to tell you. And that also, like, I found has really helped me because it shows that I'm doing the work. Like, I recognize that something's not right. So I just want to let you know.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to worry. I just want to tell you that this is how I'm feeling today.
Yeah. Yeah, that also seems so simple, but as is not sometimes, especially because when you go down that, like, when you're struggling mentally, the last thing you want to do is reach out to anyone. You want to just kind of recluse. At least that's how I get. So just having that practice every time you kind of feel something going on and recognizing it and reaching out, that's a healthy space to be in for sure.
Well, one thing I'm practicing right now is because I retreat and I avoid. I'll just avoid people, and because then I don't have to. It's just easier for me to deal with it alone. But one thing that I've been challenged to do is lean into it. So when I feel the avoidance coming on, or I want to like not talk about something or not do something, I lean into it and I put extra energy into it. And then it becomes easier and easier every time to not avoid people or not to be like retreat. So I love that. I need to start doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, hey, what's going on? I'm having a shit day, but how are you?
Right.
Okay, so let's end on a lighter note. I want to know, because you're big in the beauty wellness space as well. So like, what is your favorite beauty hack right now? Like it could be makeup, skincare, anything. Because I know you always have the hacks.
Yeah. Well, one thing I do when like in terms of makeup, when I know that it's going to be like an extremely long day of wearing makeup, I do a lot of like all my creams first. And usually people only use setting powder like at the setting spray at the very end after they have all their powders. But once I lay all my cream stuff down, I spray that with setting spray first. Because if you think about it, you're like setting all that cream and everything like into place. And you let it sit for like 5 minutes.
And then
you go in with all your powders and everything.
So that's brilliant. Like I've learned
that from like drag queens. Like all my makeup like tips and everything I've learned from drag queens.
Those are the best ones.
Well, and their makeup lasts. It has to last you. Heat, lighting all day, performing. But have you ever heard of this hack where people are doing powder first? So along the same line, you put on your skincare, then you do a light layer of powder and set it with spray, and then do your foundation.
I've never put creams over powder.
I know. It's bizarre. And I have dry skin, so I'd be worried about that. Yeah. But you should try it.
Do you do this, Whitney?
I tried it once because I actually learned about it from Candace on Girls Trip. And I think I just did too much powder first because it was like really mattified and cakey. So I think it's just a light layer for me if I were to do it again. Maybe like focus on the T-zone areas.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to try both of these.
Yeah. Let's start with the cream and setting spray.
Yeah.
The powder, I think you have to be like, you have to know what you're doing.
Right. Sounds like it.
Because it's great to cover up my scar and melasma. Even my makeup artist will do that. She'll do concealer, powder, and then foundation. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
We should try that sometime.
That's a great hack. We're going to go try it.
Yeah.
Where can everyone find you, Jerwin?
I think my Instagram is Jermonje, Jermonje. I think that's what all my social media is.
Yeah. You changed it.
I've changed. I go through different eras of like my social media names. Like it's changed so many times. But I wanted Jerwin. I was like, how hard is it going to be to get Jerwin? But there's already
taken.
There's another Filipino named Jerwin that took it.
Yeah. Well,
so that's a Filipino name.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you're the only Jerwin I've ever met.
I've only met one other Jerwin in real life.
Oh.
And they actually went to my high school. We were the exact opposite. I was like the band geek nerd, and he was like football team, like jock. It was so funny.
Yeah, you're the only Jerwin I know, but you introduced me to Merwin.
Yes.
Merwin?
Yeah.
I haven't met Merwin.
If you go,
Jerwin and Merwin. Yeah.
If you go to the Wild Rose Beauty Instagram page, they're both all over it.
Okay.
So beautiful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story. I know it's hard to do, but you do it so well.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. You're going to continue to help and bless so many people.
Thank you.
Yes, we love you.
Do you want to do Be You Stay Wild with us?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So, and again, thank you. Do you want to close it?
Sure. Yeah.
The call to action.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here on the Wild Rose podcast and with Jerwin. We just love Jerwin, and we want to thank everybody for liking, subscribing, listening, sharing our podcasts with your friends, your family. We really love and appreciate your support, and we can't close without reminding you all to
Don't forget.
don't forget.
Be you, stay wild.